everyone, and welcome to the 50th episode of MHQ Foundation's 101 webcasts, where today we will be discussing about the new Dubai Law number 2 of 2025, which concerns the DIFC courts. And I couldn't think of anybody else but David Russell to explore this topic with me. David, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Kath. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for the compliment. I can only say that in terms of professional standards, it's great to be here with MHQ and you.
Thank you so much. So, David, I understand that this new Dubai law came into force just a few days ago, and it supersedes two important laws, which is the DIFC law number 10 of 2004 and the Dubai law number 12 of 2004 as well. And I wanted to explore the relevant changes between the new and the old laws, take into consideration, obviously, our favorite topic, which is foundations and underlying entities registered with the center. So, David, can you highlight for us the most relevant changes of this new law vis-a-vis structures like Dubai International Financial Center, or DIFC foundations, and holding companies?
Indeed, the key change is that, as you've said, there were two laws in place that dealt with the operation of the DIFC courts. There's actually a third, the DIFC founding law as well, but it's not affected by this law. The courts law, as we used to call it, was a DIFC law, and it dealt with what I might loosely call the internal organisation of the courts, whereas the judicial authority law dealt with effectively the apportionment of the jurisdiction of the Dubai courts, bearing in mind that the federal structure of the UAE meant that the Dubai courts within the UAE exercised judicial power other than for certain restricted federal matters. One of the consequences of that is you need to define which court within Dubai will exercise jurisdiction, and then you need to deal with how a court, a court that exercises jurisdiction within one part of Dubai has that jurisdiction, or the effect of that jurisdiction addressed in the other parts of Dubai. And those are the core problems which the new law seeks to solve. It resolves a series of problems that had existed under the old law, and it's got a number of quite useful innovations, not the least of which is the creation of a new mediation centre, so that the type of dispute that arises in a foundation will frequently be a family dispute, and very frequently mediation is a very useful tool to be adopted in trying to resolve those disputes and keep them out of court. So there are a whole series of ancillary changes which are very valuable, but the key point is the allocation of jurisdiction to the DIFC courts, and in particular, the minute you have a DIFC establishment, which of course a DIFC foundation is, Article 14A1, which reflects the terms of the previous law, makes it clear that that matter has to be heard in the DIFC and by the DIFC courts, and it will be, in general terms, DIFC law that's applied to that. That reinforces a series of provisions in the foundations law, which are colloquially referred to as the firewall, which are designed to ensure that DIFC, if you want to have a dispute about a DIFC foundation, you come here to the DIFC courts, who will determine the matter in accordance with DIFC law and not somebody else's. The other issue then, once you get that jurisdiction and you get your order, the next question becomes how it will be enforced. And this is an area where we've had a number of problems in the past, because there's been an argument about the extent to which a decision of the DIFC courts will be reviewable outside the DIFC if the assistance of the onshore Dubai courts is required to give effect to the judgment. And the significant change here is that there is an enforcement judge of the DIFC courts who has power both to make take enforcement action in civil law Dubai, but also there are a series of provisions which make it very clear that the civil law courts in Dubai are really there in an ancillary role and aren't there to decide whether or not the decision that's been made by the DIFC courts is one which they themselves would make.
Okay, so they don't look into the merits, like the Dubai courts, they cannot look into the merits of the decision passed by the DIFC courts, isn't it?
That's correct.
Okay, that's perfect. And this leads me to my second question, David. Can the Dubai courts challenge an order or decision that is issued by the DIFC courts?
Well, there's a very simple answer to that, and it's no. Once the matter is, in the first instance, within the jurisdiction of the DIFC courts, and sometimes there can be arguments about that, but normally if it's a DIFC foundation, Article 14A1 of the new law resolves that matter conclusively. And one of the other changes that have been made in the law is explicit provision for what are called provisional measures or interim and precautionary measures under Article 14, which confirms that the DIFC courts have power to issue what are called anti-suit injunctions. So the DIFC court can say, if it becomes aware of somebody outside the DIFC bringing proceedings in a court outside the DIFC that, according to DIFC law or Dubai law now, is wholly within the jurisdiction of the DIFC courts, they can make an order saying you can't do that, and that would normally be enforced in Dubai as a matter of course now, and in the other Emirates through the arrangements for the enforcement of judgments of the courts of other Emirates. Okay,
that's clear. Now I wanted to complicate things a little bit. So as you can see, we have this structure here where the IFC Foundation is holding three different verticals. Yeah, the first vertical has this holding company also in the IFC, which in turn hold properties in Dubai mainland, not the IFC. Then we have the second vertical, which is a foundation holding a financial portfolio and bank accounts in Switzerland. And thirdly, we have foundation holding a DMCC company, which in turn hold a mainland operational company, which is a company registered with the DET authority. So if we go through each vertical, I wanted to explore with you, for instance, if there is a dispute in terms of ownership of the Dubai properties, which courts would have jurisdiction in this case?
Only the DIFC courts, because the DIFC holding company will itself be a DIFC establishment, and Article 14A1 of the new law makes it clear that only the DIFC courts can deal with that matter.
Okay, that's perfect. Now, if we move on, what about disputes involving the financial portfolio, which is sitting out of Switzerland?
Well, the first point is that in general terms, the Swiss courts are not going to pay much attention to the fact that there's a law of the UAE which says you can only sue in the UAE. So a lot is going to depend on what the specific assets are and whether they can make an order directed to that asset. They can't make an order requiring the foundation to do anything in relation to the asset, because that order won't be enforced here and the foundation's doing things will be determined here. Nor can they make an order directing an officer of the foundation to do anything in relation to the assets, because if they were to make that order, the person against whom they've made it is by force of that order deprived of any powers in relation to the foundation as a result of our amendments to the law in 2024. Okay. If the asset is such that the Swiss courts have a specific entitlement in relation to the property under Swiss law, then they may just decide to go ahead anyway. And because the property is in Switzerland, they would be able to enforce that in Switzerland. Yeah. There's a further point I think that needs to be made here, which is that foundations are not allowed to carry on commercial activities. So that one of the things you would need to consider, depending on the nature of the portfolio, is whether a more appropriate structure would involve a DIFC holding company for this vertical as well. But that will depend on the circumstances of the case.
Mm-hmm. Okay, clear. Moving to the third vertical, where we have the MCC company and mainland company, and I want to focus in mainland company. Yeah, so that's a very common structure among our clients. In case of a dispute in the level of the mainland company, which courts would have jurisdiction in this case?
Well, prima facie, the onshore courts.
Yeah.
Both in terms of the activities of the mainland company and, for that matter, the activities of the DMCC company. There are ways and means, and what I'm about to say applies to the financial portfolio as well. If you're dealing with contractual rights, Article 14B of the new law, which repeats Article 582 of the old Judicial Authority law, provides that the parties can consent to have the matter resolved by the DIFC courts. And that, as a matter of private international law, would normally be enforced in most countries of the world. The question, of course, will be how you have such provision in a contract. Technically, it's possible for parties, once the dispute has arisen, to commit it to the DIFC courts, but that's unlikely to be useful because each party will be legally represented. Each party will be advised as to whether it's better to have the matter heard in the DIFC courts or in the local courts.
Yeah.
And if both parties have the same advice, then one of them will proceed on the basis that it's in their interest to have it in the DIFC courts. The other party will proceed on the basis that it's not, and the result is that there won't be an agreement. So an agreement of that sort has to be in the original contract, and of course that won't cover non-contractual claims like claims for negligence, product liability and the like. So yes, Article 14B, is useful in terms of being able to move some disputes to the DIFC courts, but it won't always be capable of being applied.
Okay, understood. So the advice we can give here is that the parties, so long as it's possible in the original agreement, to add the jurisdiction of the DIFC courts into the agreements involving mainland or any other jurisdiction that is not in the DIFC. That's
correct. Bear in mind too that once you've got an order, one of the issues that's always existed in relation to the DIFC is that foreign courts, and to some extent the courts of the other emirates, don't really understand the nature of a financial free zone or the fact that DIFC courts are just part of the DIFC court, the Dubai court structure. This new law makes it very clear that they are, and that decisions are enforceable through the Dubai court system. That will make it easier to attract not only the provisions for recognition of judgments within the UAE in other emirates, but also recognition of judgments under the international conventions to which the UAE is a party, which notably include the GCC Convention and the Riyadh Arab Convention. And where this becomes particularly important is in the context of anti-suit injunctions, because in principle, they ought to be enforceable under those provisions as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You'll run into a public policy argument, no doubt.
Exactly.
So there's none of this is absolutely guaranteed, but certainly the position has been very significantly strengthened by these changes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's clear. Well, thank you, David, again for joining us today and for your comments. I hope this webcast was insightful to everyone as it was for me. And thanks again and have a good day.
Okay. My pleasure. Bye.
Bye.